Guys, so before understanding the MCP tool lab, we just need to cover some theory. So let's cover this theory, right? It's a little bit of code also. So first of all, we need to understand how to use the OpenAI chat completions to understand this example. So I will just give an overview idea just so that you can get familiar. So as you know, this is the OpenAI create chat completions API, right? So we have two APIs. The old one was completions API, which is now legacy, not legacy. So do not use this one. You have to use the create chat completion API. And I think there is one new also, the response API. But right now we will be working with chat completions API. So this is how the API looks, api.openai.com, v1 chat completions. So you can directly use this API also, but what we will be using is Python SDK, right? So let's understand this Python SDK. So first of all, you create your client, right, which is OpenAI, and then with the client, what you do, you call .chat.completions.create, right? In this, what you pass is the model name. So this is the required argument. You have to pass the model name, and the message is list, right? So you have to, or array you can say. So the messages is also important. In each message there is a role which tells what is the role. So role could be like, this role could be a developer role, a system role, right? So here if there is a developer message, so the content could be anything, but the role will be developer, right? So role will be developer here. And in case of other messages, so in case of system message, the role will be system. And you get the point. In case of assistant message, which is AI message, the role is assistant, user message, role is user. And then tool message, if there is a tool message, the role will be tool, right? If there is function message, function calling is deprecated, but if there is it, then function is the role, right? So this is how tool message, assistant message, user, system, developer message, all of these messages has different roles. So here we just specified the role, right? And the content, whatever the content that role has, right? Like if the developer says that you are a helpful assistant, and the user says like hello, right? So those messages are in this list. So it is one by one. So this is a list. So the sequence is maintained, right? So at index 0 is the first message, index 1 is the next message. So that message could be from anyone. That message could be from developer, from user, from assistant, right? So this is how you know, the message tracking, the sequence of message is being tracked. Also the context is maintained, like the whole chat is maintained in this messages list. So we pass this messages list, right? So as our conversation will keep on building, then this messages list will keep on building as well, right? It will grow. So that is messages. Then the next one is stream. So the stream parameter is basically to tell you that you see when I click on like tell me about streaming, right? If I click on this, then you say, then this like this Gemini model, right? It was basically streaming it. So streaming means it was coming one by one. So you don't want your user to wait for the whole response to be completed, right? So you give the chunk of a response first, then chunk of another response, then chunk of another response, so that there is no latency, right? User feels that yes, content is coming and coming and coming, right? It's not like user is waiting and then after 5 seconds, then response came. The response came should be immediate, right? So that is the concept of chunking. We chunk the response, right? So stream equal to true if you want that. Otherwise, you can just leave this parameter because this is not a required parameter, right? So yeah, here you will be having the stream parameter. I think says stream. If set to true, model response data will be streamed to the client as it is generated using server sent events. See the streaming section below for more information, right? Along with stream response guide. So yeah, this is also the case that we can have, right? Let's go to the default one. So in the default one, you will just pass model and just pass messages into your client.chat, because it is chat completion API. So that's why you see here there is slash chat and slash completions. So the same thing is here, slash chat slash completions, and then you call the create method, right? So this is what you have. Now you have the completion. So completion is basically your response, right? So in this context, when you send a request, you receive a response. But when you send a request, you can also receive multiple responses. It's up to you. So for that, there is a parameter called n. So you can see n here. That is how many chat completion choices to generate for each input message. So for each input message, you can have multiple responses. So even when you use ChatGPT, sometimes you get two responses, and then they say, then select the best response. Like for the user for the user feedback, they want us to select one of the response, but it generates two response sometimes, right? So how many responses it should generate, it depends on this integer n. So this integer is optionally defaults to 1. It is default to 1 because we do not want that our cost is increased, right? No one wants that they are getting two responses when they just only want one, right? Because it also increases cost. So here you can see you will be charged based on the number of generated tokens across all choices, right? So if you keep n equal to 1 if you want to minimize the cost. So that is why we keep it 1, right? But that is the purpose of n. So it's basically the number of responses, right? So here the choices basically represent the responses. So if we have set n equal to 1, so we will always use choices 0. So choices is a list of responses, right? So which response you want, that is your choice, right? That is how you can understand. So the choices is a list, and we just select the first element of that list, and in that there is message, right? So that message is what, it's basically we will see what this message is in this like you can see the response here. So in this response, you are getting this choices list, right? And here you have message. So this message is the basically the response of the AI, right? The model. So in this message, the role will be assistant because it is generated by AI. Whatever the response is, like hello, how I can assist you today, because we send the message hello. User send the message hello. So that's why assistant is saying hello, how I can assist you today, right? And then there is annotations also. So this is the whole message body, right? So this is a message, and in message you can extract the role, you can extract the content, you can extract other things also like annotations or those things. So we will generally extract the content, right? So like in my code also, here we are extracting tool calls. So tools calls is one more thing, right? But in last, what we are extracting the content, right? So let's also understand that when we get a response, we first select what response we want, which is always the first response, because we are not generating multiple responses, right? And then we are extracting the message, and in this message, which is a this kind of structure, right? This is a message. In message we can extract content or tool calls, like tool calls, yeah. So message tool calls 0, right? So this is basically you also get what tool calls a model has make, right? So that is a list. So there can be a lot of tools that the model want to call. So that is why tool calls is a list, and it tells which tool to call, right? So tool call 0 means the first tool call that the model made, you want to have its details, right? Content is basically the content generated by the AI, right? So that is in the content. So now this one is simple, create chat completion. Now let's look at other things. So this is, what is this? This is nothing. Okay. Then chat completion object, right? So this is a chat completion object. So here you can see the same thing, which is the one here. The same, this is the response, and this response is basically a chat completion object. So you can see the same thing. You can see here the index also. So index tell like what is the index of the choice, right? I think here also you can see it. Well, here you cannot see it. But yeah, that is the chat completion object. Now let's move to tool calls, right? So for tool calls, you have to first understand like how these tool calls work, right? So you have to understand the flow first. First, what will happen? We will send our tool definitions with the message, right? So we are sending our tool definitions, as you can see here in this code. This is tools. So we are sending tools definition when we are calling create.create, right? So in these tools definition, this is the tool definition. We will understand how this definition is constructed. But this is basically a list of tool definitions in which we are just passing one definition. So in tools, we just passed list of definitions, and these definitions are defined like this. So this is the definition, right? You will understand later like what this definition is saying. But yeah, you have to pass the tool definition plus messages. So we pass tool definition and message to our model to get the response, right? So that is clear. So first of all, we send tool definitions plus messages to the model. In return, model gives us the response, and that response is like if our tool was get weather from location, and our question was what's the weather in Paris, then our model will give a tool call to us as a response. So that tool call is get weather Paris, right? So that will come to the developer now, right? So now we have to handle this. So as you can see here also, we give this response, and afterward we are checking what tool calls it has made, and in this tool calls we are extracting our tool call, right? So if there are tool calls, then we are extracting the first tool call, and we are storing it in a tool call object, and then from that tool call we are extracting what is the function name, right? That what function the our model is trying to call, right? Our model is sending us a request that please call this function for me, right? So it need to tell some details. So it tells what is the name of the tool that the model wants to call, and what are the arguments that the model wants to call, right? What are the arguments of that? So we use those tool arguments and the name to call our function. So we call our function seeing all the arguments that the model has passed and what function it wants to call. We call that, we get the result of that call, and in the next, we basically in the next like next query from the user, we basically give us the role tool, and we give the tool call ID and the content that our tool has generated. So we call the function as a developer, right? The model gives us what function to call with the parameters. We call the function, and whatever the result of the function is, we give it back to the LLM. So when we give it back to the LLM, we need to tell that this response is basically coming from the tool. So the tool is giving this response. So that is why role will be tool, and content will be the response, the response of the tool, which is the result of the tool, right? So in our case, we said calculate this. So our response was basically the result of this, which is 11106,336. After multiplying these two numbers, this was the result. So in content, this will be the result here in string format, right? And we also pass the tool call ID so that the LLM knows that which tool we are talking about, right? Whose response it is, which tool's response it is, right? So that is why we need to pass this as extra, right, in our messages. So this is the whole thing. So we give the developer, as a developer, we pass tool definition messages to our model. Our model gives us tool calls, like which tool to call. We execute that, right? We get a response. Then we send all the prior messages, right? So we are also sending all the prior messages. How we are sending all the prior messages? because this messages list, right? This messages list is all here. We are not passing all the messages, but probably we will be having a messages list in which we keep on appending, right? So yeah, we are passing the whole history, all prior messages, and the response of the tool back to the model, and the model gives us the final answer. So in the final response, we will not extract the tool calls, we will just extract the content, right? So from here we extract the content. So this is how this whole flow is working. Now let's look at some how to define these tools, right? So in these tools, what we are seeing here is there is a type function. So first of all, because we are calling the function, so that's why the type of the tool will be function. Then that will be name of the function, then the description of function. So name of function is get horoscope, and the description is get today's horoscope for astrological sign, right? That is the description of the function. And then the parameters. So parameters is basically what to pass in that function. And these parameters has a type object. So object means it is a JSON object. So parameters are passed as JSON object by the LLM. So LLM is giving you the JSON object. So that is what it means by type object. Now that JSON object will have properties. So now let's define the properties. So this JSON object has these properties. So these properties are defined in the dictionary only, right? So in these properties we have one property is sign, right? So that will be the sign of whatever the sign, Libra or anything, Aquarius, Taurus, right? So that is a sign. Then the sign will be of type string, right? So this property will be of type string, and the description of the property will be, right, this is astrological sign. So this is the description of the property, like what this property or what is representing, like, so this property is representing what is the sign of astrological sign, right? So user will input what is its astrological sign, and required means this property is required. So this is how parameters are defined. So in this we just give a JSON object, so that is why type is always object. Properties are basically our properties. We will name all the properties, and then we will give the type of all those properties and description. Similarly, here in the function, we tell that this is a function calling kind of tool, and the name of the function and the description. So this is how it is working. Then this is the function, which is just appending sign, right? Next today you will befriend the baby otter. Okay, so you will befriend the baby otter, right? So that is the response. So no matter what is the horoscope, the prediction will be sent. Yeah. So create a running input list. We will add to this to over time. So we just made this list. So this is for history, conversation history, right? Then we pass this input list as well as our tools. So these are the tools that is we defined. So we only define one tool, right? But we can define more than one tool. So this is the list of the tools. So we are giving the tool definition. So this is basically the definition of the tool, right? Which we are providing to the LLM. So we are providing the tools list, we are providing the input list, right? And the model to create, and then we are calling the model, right? So the model will create a response, right? And then we will basically iterate that response, right? Yeah. So this is using the response API, right? This is not using the chat completion API. So that is why it's a little different. But yeah, the things remain same. So response API is the new API here. And yeah. So while defining functions also, there is one more example for this of get weather. Same thing, we are putting type, name, description, and in parameters we are putting object, then properties. We have location property, which is string, description, unit property, which is string and its description, and enum. So this is string and enum also. So like only these two strings are valid. Then the description, then what are required, location and units are required, additional properties, and this everything, right? So all of these are the how we define the function definitions, how we do that, right? Function definitions or tool definitions, you can say, right? So these are some best practices, and then how to handle these function calls. So there is a function definition aspect of it, right? So this is the definition of function which we are sending in our first request, right? So we are sending this in our first request. Afterwards, our model will give us response tool calls. So how that tool calls will look. So that tool calls look something like this, right? So when the LLM gives us a response like this, call this function, right? So that is the response of function calls. Like how those look like this. There will be an ID. So that will basically help us to understand, like, which tool it is. That is a specific ID of the tool call, not the tool. It's the ID of the tool call, like what tool the LLM called, it's the ID of that. Then it represents what is the tool type, that is a function, then its name and the arguments that it wants to send. So these are the arguments, and this is the name which LLM will decide, right? LLM has all the information of the tool, so it knows what kind of arguments it need to send, what kind of value should be here, right? And also the name of the tool. So in our get weather example, right? So the name was get weather, and you have the properties as location and units, right? So here also you see this is giving the location only because location is the primary parameter and units is not the primary parameter here. So I think there was locations also and the units also, right, in get weather. So here by handling the function, it is giving us the location Paris, France, location Bolongas, I don't know how to pronounce this, Colombia, and to body high, right? So these are all the things here. So yeah, so these are the function calling list, right? So this is the function calling that we get from the model, right? So yeah, it is the next function call is also for get weather, and these are the arguments, and the next function call is for send email. and the arguments are different, like to, body, and this kind of things. So this is a sample response with function calls, and this is a list. Because why it should be a list? Because an LLM can call a lot of functions, right? And it can call even one function with different parameters, like it's calling get weather with different parameters, or it might call just different functions altogether, like get weather and send email. So that is why there will be a list of function calls that the LLM is making. So we need to capture that. We need to capture the ID of the function call, right? So when we give the response back, we tell him that which function call we are talking about, right? So that is why ID is important, and the name and argument are really important, because then we know what to pass in our function and in which function to pass what, right? So this is really important. And afterwards, what we have from the tool calls, so which will be a list, right? Message or tool calls will be all the tool calls that the LLM wants. We extract the name of the function. We extract the arguments of the function. As these arguments are a JSON object, we convert them into a Python object using JSON.loads, and then we basically call our function. So this call function is a kind of a function that route, you know. So this call function is a route kind of function. So if the call function, we have a name get weather, then it will call get weather. If the name is send email, then it will use send email. So this name can be used in this way. So this name will be used in routing. So whatever the name, we will have a mapping of name to function call, the exact function calls, right? So that is how it's handling. It's passing the name of the function, and then it's passing the arguments. So arguments are basically the uh, Python objects right here. So yeah, and then what we are doing, we are appending. So now we have called the function. We have first of all extracted whatever there was in the call functions, right? Function calls, we extracted that, and then we call the function. And afterwards calling the function, we need to go back and send the response to the model. So for that, we want to give the result of the function call. So the result of the function call will be in the content. Then what is the role will be tool, because this is the result of the function call, tool calling, right? And then the tool call ID will be basically the ID of the tool, right? So which it called, right? So this will be the ID of the, no, even can you understand that this will be ID of the tool call? This is not the ID of the tool. This is the ID of the tool call, like the tool call which this makes. So this will be like something like this, right? Call 1 2 3 4 6, something like this. That will be the tool call ID, right? So after this is all the things that you need to know to understand this code. So in this code, what we are doing, first of all, we are defining our tool definition. So in tool definition, we are defining what is the type, so that it will be function. Then we are defining what the function is, what is the name of it, what is the description of it, what parameters it will be. So this parameter will be a JSON object, so that is the type is object, and this JSON object will have properties, and these properties are like A, B, right? So A is type of an integer, and its description is first number. B is also a type of integer, and its description is second number. And then these both properties are required. So this is how we constructed. So in our tools list, we only have, so this is a tool definition, right? So this tool definition is only one definition of the tool. So we are providing only one tool to our LLM, right? What will we specify? We'll specify OpenAI.chat.completions.create, right? So OpenAI.chat.completions is basically the API we are hitting. .create is a method, right? And then we will pass the model, which is mandatory, messages, which is mandatory. Then tool is not mandatory, but we want to pass the tools also. So message is basically from the user, role user, content is calculate this into this, right? Model is GPT-4 mini, right? Response, then we will get a response. From that response, what we are doing, we are getting our first response, because we will only get one response because n equal to 1, right? Then from that response, we are extracting the message, and from message tool calls, right? So message can have different things. Message can have content also, tool calls, attribute also, attributes also. So from message, we are extracting tool calls. And as we know, here we only define one tool, and we know that it will only call one tool or one, right? So that's why we are sure that the tool call will be only one tool calls 0, right? Otherwise, we could use a loop, and in the loop, we could basically iterate each tool call, right? But right now, we are just extracting the first tool call, and from that first tool call, we are extracting function.name, so the name of the function that the LLM wants to call, and then the arguments. So what arguments the LLM wants to pass, and we are converting it to JSON.loads to a Python object, so that we can call our function. Here we know that we only have one tool, that's why we have used the same tool that we have defined, which is in a different file. So yeah, so the tool is defined in a different file, and this is the tool A into B. So that is a really simple tool, and we have also defined the type hinting and docstrings, right? So here we are just using that tool call dot function dot arguments, right? And yeah, then we are executing it directly. So here we are taking from the Python object the parameters, and then we are executing our tool call and saving the result in result variable. Now we are making the again another call to LLM. So where we are giving these messages, that same message, calculate this, and then the response. So response was the response from this. So whatever the response was from response choices 0 dot message, so that is our response, right? We are appending that also, and after that we are appending the role. So whatever we got the response from the tool, so for that we are giving role tool. The content is the result of the tool, and then we are also passing the tool call ID, so that it knows like what tool calling ID we are talking about, whose result is this, right? So that is how we send the message to the LLM. And in the final thing, we got a final response, and it also has the first response twice 0 dot message dot content. So that will be the content, the final content, right? And as you can see, when I try to run this, so this is the kind of response we will be getting, right? The result of this is this. right? This is the response, the final response from the LLM, which we are also printing here, right? So that is why this is the thing. Yeah. So we have understand about one thing. For MCP, we have understand this code which we will use, right? So we just need to understand this OpenAI API. However, I won't recommend you to learn more about this chat completion API, as we are moving towards a response API, which is a new API, because I think it will be deprecated once that is fully functional, because completions API, this API is deprecated, right? So that is why chat completion is still being used, right? So chat completion API here, chat completion. Okay, so this is the this API, right? And let me also search for the response API. Let's search here response. We got, yeah, about the response API, migrate to responses API. So response API will look something like, okay, let me see it. Yeah, so this is the response API. So you can see in the response API as v1 response. So now they are recommending to shift towards this response API. So this is the new API that they have created, right? So this will be improved one, right? So yeah, you can look into this also.